A very good morning to one and all present here. I welcome you all to the fifth episode of the PAM Masterclass training series. I'm Srilekha, product consultant at Manage Engine, and we have the presenter of this session, Ganesh, who's our head of support and client services at Manage Engine. So, before we begin this session, I'd like to make some important housekeeping announcements. All the attendee lines will be muted. So, if you have any questions, so please feel free to post them on the question and answer panel, or you can raise them anytime during the session. We have a live Q&A after the end of today's webinar. So, if at any given point you have any question, please feel free to ping us. The session collateral, including the presentation deck and the session recording, will be sent to you over an email. So please allow us a couple of days to process them. If you have any feedback or if you need any technical assistance on the PAM360 products or the other PAM products in our portfolio, please feel free to send us an email on the email ID that you see on screen. You can also leave your feedback for our future masterclass sessions, which we will then take it up. So, coming to the masterclass schedule, for the benefit of those who do not know what masterclass is our exclusive product training series, which happens on the second Thursday of every month. In the masterclass sessions, we cover one core PAM module in each of these episodes, starting from privileged account governance until privileged session management and secure remote access, which we have covered so far. In today's episode, we will cover PAM360's exclusive contextual integrations with enterprise applications and other IT management applications. This will be followed by SSH key and SSL certificate management in the upcoming episode. So, without further ado, I'd like to hand the control over to Ganesh, who will be taking you through today's episode. Thank you, Ganesh. Over to you.
Thanks, Lekha, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the session. My name is Ganesh. I lead the support and pre-sales team for Manage Engine's PAM suite of products. So, as Lekha mentioned, we do this masterclass training series. We take a core module of our PAM solution and elaborate about the capabilities and do a deep dive of how you can effectively use that particular module and what kind of challenges that the particular module solves. So, in today's episode, we're focusing on contextual integrations that are available in our PAM360 solution and how you can leverage them for getting the best out of the PAM360's capabilities. So, we have already had 4 masterclass sessions in the past. If you need the recording of any of those sessions, we'll be happy to share those collaterals and the recordings of those as well. So feel free to drop us an email. So in today's session, we're going to see those integrations and capabilities where you can take our PAM360 solution and hook it to various other appliances and applications that you would have in your enterprise infrastructure. So PAM360 has out of the box integrations with a wide range of applications, starting from ITSM solutions or SIM solutions or EVBA solutions. So we'll see what are the purpose behind these integrations and what kind of practical challenges these integrations solves and how you can actually configure and make use of them. We also have integrations with our native Manage Engine products, such as AD Manager or Service Desk Plus or Logs 360. And because these solutions are bundled with a common framework on top of which the services were built, on top of which these applications were built, we are able to provide a seamless and tight integration between these Manage Engine solutions. So we'll be talking about that as well. So we'll start with a simple scenario. So let's say you have a developer and this developer needs access to a Linux box, which contains some critical data and critical resources. And the developer would like to run an application to test some of the capabilities they have built. And unfortunately, they could do that only in that Linux machine. So how would this be handled in a typical IT infrastructure? So obviously the developer needs to put a request and get an approval from the Linux administrators, perhaps, to be able to gain access to the system. And PAM solutions are there. Obviously, you can store the Linux machine in PAM. You can rotate the secrets of that Linux machines or SSH keys in that PAM solution. Those are the conventional capabilities that are typically available in all PAM solutions. And PAM solutions also offer this request approve workflow mechanisms where somebody can request access to a system and get an approval from the respective administrator. Or sometimes, if that Linux machine, let's say, is managed by two different teams, then they could even get approval from multiple teams and multiple administrators before they can actually gain access to that box. But the problem is, generally, if anybody needs to get an approval or raise a change window or create an incident, they will typically use IT service management solutions such as Manage Engine Service Desk Plus or ServiceNow or Jira or many, many other ITSM solutions that are available in the market. So the problem is, in this scenario, the user needs to raise a request. So mostly they will probably send an email. The email is captured by the ITSM solution, which then converts it into a ticket. The ticket gets assigned automatically based on the rules to the respective Linux team's administrators. One of the Linux team administrators would probably review the request, check the reason why this developer needs access to that Linux machine, and they will say this is approved. They'll just mark that particular request as approved in the ITSM solution, but this doesn't complete the workflow. Now the developer have to raise a ticket by sending an email, and they also have to log into PAM and raise a request to that particular Linux machine. And the administrator also has to like approve the request in ITSM solution for auditing purposes. And ITSM solutions are the core solutions for asset management, change management, incident management, and all of it. So that makes sense to do this in ITSM solution. But there's a duplication of work where both the requestor and the approver also have to log into PAM. The requestor puts a request and the administrator has to approve the request in PAM solution as well. And only then the developer actually gains access to the Linux machine. They do their activity that they would like to perform. And once the activity is done, the session access is revoked in PAM360 solution automatically. So the pain point here is like asking both these users, the administrator and the requestor, to log into multiple solutions and do the same job twice, to put a request and to do an approval. So to solve this challenge, because I mean, when you think about it on a single instance, it looks like a simple task. But imagine having hundreds of access requests every day and having to log into multiple applications to solve the same scenario is going to be a really painful task. So in PAM360, we have direct integration with all the leading ITSM solutions like Manage Engine Service Desk Plus or Service Desk Plus On Demand, ServiceNow, Jira, Zendesk, pretty much all the leading ITSM solutions, or I would say any ITSM solution that has the relevant API to be able to query it and get the ticket details are supported in our PAM solution. So what this integration helps us is that when a user sends an email and when the ITSM solution makes it a ticket, assigns it to the admin reviews that ticket and approves it in the ITSM solution. And the administrator's job is done at that point. Like they don't have to log into PAM to do another approval. And the user has already raised a request. And again, the user doesn't have to log into PAM to do a request again. So when all of this is done in your ITSM solution where somebody raised a ticket that's approved, that approval kind of takes effect inside our PAM 360 solution. So from a practical perspective, the user sends an email, the email is approved, converted into a ticket, and the admin approves it in ITSM solution. The user will log into PAM to launch remote access, to launch an SSH session into that Linux box. And when they launch or when they try to launch the Linux session, they will be prompted for the ticket ID or the change ID or the incident ID based on which module was used for this. So when the user supplies the ticket ID, PAM solution connects to your ITSM solutions. It basically triggers a REST API call to retrieve the ticket details. And you can configure a series of criteria to say, like, please provide access only if the ticket is open. Provide access only if the ticket is in progress state. If it is in open state or if it is in closed state, then the user should not be given access. And you can create more criteria, pretty much all the fields that are available in your ITSM solution, because in most cases, you would probably create custom fields to store custom values like severity or department details, or even sometimes site names or floor numbers would be used. So even though they are all custom values stored in your ITSM solution for each ticket, you can use those as criteria in our PAM solution. So when the user tries to launch a remote session into the Linux machine, PAM is going to talk to your ITSM and get all these criteria validated. So it is going to check if the ticket is open, if the ticket is assigned to the same person who has raised a ticket in the first place, because PAM knows who this user is, because the users log into PAM using their own Active Directory or Azure AD credentials with MFA. So obviously PAM knows who it is. PAM will also check if it is the same person who has raised a ticket in the first place in your ITSM. And then it will check, has the approval been given? If the approval status is not approved, the user will not be allowed to gain the SSH connection to that endpoint. So in this workflow, you can see that the tasks done by both applications are like marked with different colors. At the same time, the user's task has been reduced. The users don't have to log into multiple applications to perform a simple task of getting an access request. So that being said, um, we'll jump to the next scenario, which is about user behavior analytics. In this integration, we have options to hook PAM 360 with Manage Engine's own Analytics Plus solution, which is our business intelligence solution. We also have Logs 360, which is our UEBA solution, and Event Log Analyzer is our SIM solution. Now, with the BI and UEBA solution integrations, PAM 360 can do a lot more in terms of contextually understanding what is going on in a typical environment. So let's take another scenario where an administrator notices a user launching an RDP session into a Windows box. So an administrator is just monitoring what's happening in PAM, and they see that someone has launched an RDP session. And the user works in the RDP session. And after the RDP session is completed, the user closes and they check out another Linux machine's credential. I mean, this Linux machine credential is shared to them probably for break glass purposes or like a DR purpose. This is not a system that is delegated to this user for day-to-day usage. They probably belong to the Windows team, so they don't deal with Linux machines at all. But on this particular day, the user launches an RDP session, and once they're done with it, they retrieve a Linux machine's credential, and then they decide to bypass PAM, because in this scenario, the actual Linux credential has been shared to be retrieved in plain text. The user actually has the ability to copy the credential. Typically, this will not happen in PAM solutions. We suggest not to allow credentials to be retrieved in plain text. If anybody needs access, they could use our session management module to launch an RDP session or a SSH session without the knowledge of the actual password. That's the ideal setup. But let's say you have a Linux box and it's a break glass machine, so When everything is down, this is the machine that you go to perform break class operations. So obviously, you can't lock this machine up and have multiple people doing approvals to get to that box. It's a critical box, and it needs to be available 24/7, 365 days. So such a scenario, this user has decided to pick that machine's credential on a normal day. And then they decide to bypass PAM by just closing PAM and trying to launch an SSH session from their own laptop. They are trying to launch a putty session or a secure CRT session, and then they supply that machine name. They paste the credentials they have copied from PAM, and they have basically gone to that machine. Now, in this scenario, PAM knows that the user logged into that box and retrieved or connected to the Windows machine. And PAM also knows that the user has already checked out the Linux password. But beyond that, this user bypassing PAM and connect to that machine directly and doing whatever activity they would like to perform, this entire story is invisible to PAM because it's not happening in PAM. All the user did is retrieve the Linux secret in PAM. And for that, PAM will have the audit. But after that, because the user decided to bypass PAM and directly go to that box, now PAM doesn't have any vision to what is happening in that particular machine. So that's scenario one. And in this case, what's going to happen is PAM360's integration with Analytics Plus will come in handy. This Analytics Plus solution even has a deep learning machine learning engine named Zia, which crunches data quite efficiently. And in PAM's audit area, um, this is my local test instance. And you can see that in PAM's audit area, it captures pretty much all activities that can possibly happen in PAM solution, like somebody logging into PAM solution or logging out or retrieving a secret or deleting a file, anything that can possibly happen in PAM solution. So these are all the operations that can possibly happen. And all these operations are audited and the records are stored in this raw audits area. So obviously in this area, for our scenario, you're going to see two audits. The first audit would say that the user launched an RDP session and connected to a particular machine. And the second audit would say the user retrieved the credentials of a Linux machine. So in the operated by, you will see that username. In the IP address, you will see the user's laptop IP, like the machine from where they accessed PAM to check out that password. And in the user account, you will see that root account or whichever Linux account they retrieved. And in the resource name, you will see the name of the Linux box. The operation type will read password retrieved. So the raw audit is here about the activity of this user retrieving a Linux secret. But how can it be useful when it just audits and not intimates you? That's where this Analytics Plus integration comes into picture. So what happens is when you integrate PAM with Analytics Plus, these raw audits are shared with Analytics Plus in real time. So Analytics Plus will crunch all this data, like how many ever audits you have. So I have about 5,000 audits because I installed this product only a couple of days ago. But let's say you have deployed this solution and you've been using this tool for 3 months. Now, in these 3 months, there would have been hundreds of user logging in activity. There would be hundreds of users launching remote sessions and accessing different machines. And with all this raw data, like the timestamps, who logged in, from which IP address they logged in, and what activity they are performing in PAM, with all this data crunched by our Analytics Plus solution, we can get a very useful insight. So, for example, PAM will know your typical business hours, and PAM will know the usage pattern of your users. Now, this particular user who launched an RDP session and then retrieved a Linux password, this user perhaps have never touched a Linux machine in the last 3 months because they are probably from a Windows team. But today they've decided to check out a Linux password, right? So PAM360's integration will leverage BI solutions capability where the BI solution will clearly detect this as an anomaly. Right? The user never touched a Linux password before, and today they've decided to touch the Linux password. It doesn't matter what they did after that, but the point is, the moment PAM recognizes something out of ordinary, like somebody logging into the system at a wrong time or somebody accessing a machine that they've never ever accessed in the point, all kinds of possible scenarios where something out of the ordinary is detected, the PAM360 solution will send out an alert saying that this looks like an anomaly. Usually this doesn't happen. And now that it happened, the risk assessment threshold will be high and PAM will trigger an alert. So the advantage of this capability is that the longer you use the integration, the better it gets, because the more data it will have to crunch and the more effective its insights will be. So it's called the anomaly detection feature, which is part of our PAM360 solutions integration with Manage Engine Analytics Plus solution. Let's take another scenario where an administrator notices an employee launching an RDP session into a machine, let's say at 2 a.m. So typical business hours are from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. for this enterprise. And that's when users typically log into PAM, launch RDP sessions, SSH sessions, sometimes request access, and then gain access. All that happens between 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. usually. Maybe plus or minus 10 minutes, but nothing out of ordinary. But one day, this employee decides to access a machine at 2 a.m. Again, PAM's analytics integration will kick in. It is going to read this audit and immediately recognize that, oops, it doesn't fall into the traditional business hours. Why would someone access a system at 2 a.m.? So whether or not it's a false positive, PAM will send out an alert. It will do its job by informing you guys that this is an anomaly because someone is logging into a system, a critical system at 2 a.m. So all admins will get an email, or if you have a SIM solution, a syslog message and a SNMP trap can be triggered. But the point is, you'll be notified that something out of ordinary has happened, and then you can take a call. Maybe it's a false positive. Somebody really needed access to that machine at 2 a.m., or somebody is trying to get into the system because they've gone rogue. So regardless of the situation, PAM's integration with business intelligence solution will help you in gaining that visibility of anomaly detection. And apart from this, let's take another scenario where an administrator have their PAM 360 window open in their laptop. They're navigating through PAM, they're doing some administrative work, and then they are opening the secret vault where the list of credentials are stored, and they just clicked on one particular credential. Now, because this is an administrator, the owner who actually stored the credential, they have the capability to look at it. And they looked at it. And when they looked at it, a bystander or another employee who was just walking by, they casually looked over the shoulders and saw what that password is. I mean, generally the passwords are strong and long enough to not be able to easily recognize. Regardless, let's assume that it was a pretty simple password, something easy to remember. And these users just casually walked over the shoulder and looked at what that password is and memorized. Then they decide to go back to their desk. And as usual, they don't go to PAM. They already know the password. They don't need PAM. So they are trying to log into that critical server directly from their machine. They try to launch an RDP session or SSH session based on what operating system it is. And they're trying to supply the credential that they memorized by just looking over the shoulder of their boss or an administrator who just had the session open. So this can happen quite often. I mean, it's easy to think that this is not a usual scenario, but trust me, the number of people who don't lock their laptops, the number of people who don't look around before opening something sensitive is too high. So it's a very common incident that can happen anywhere. It's just that in general, it doesn't involve mission critical credentials or highly confidential data. But that being said, there are chances of this happening for a critical credential, right? So in this case, again, as far as spam is concerned, there is absolutely no anomaly. A valid administrator looked at a password that they are authorized to see. PAM doesn't know that someone else was standing right behind this administrator and looked at the password and memorized it. So PAM, as far as PAM is concerned, it's all good. But the user decides to go back to their desk and launch a connection and log into the target machine. Now, in this scenario, what happens is spam only knows to the point where the right user looked at the right password and everything is good. But we have a SIM solution, right? So you have probably Manage Engine's Log 360 solution or Event Log Analyzer solution. And what's SIM solution's job? It's supposed to gather all the event logs and activities that are happening in all of your endpoints. So let's say it's a Windows machine, and this user who just looked at the password and pretty much stole the credential, they log into this machine, and the moment they log in, the event activity log will be sent to the SIM solution. The Log 360 will get a message saying this user logged into this Windows machine using a highly privileged account. And Log 360, to do its job, is going to forward this information to PAM. And PAM will realize, according to the rules, this credential is not supposed to be accessible by this user. But how come this user logged into that Windows machine? So that's where the problem is. So this is called contextual um, um, integration to gain advanced event correlation. So advanced event correlation is where something happens in PAM, something happens in your network, and that in turn becomes a data for Log 360, and both these solutions work together to identify what is the full story. So in this case, SIM solution will recognize that this user has logged into the system and send that message over to PAM, and PAM will recognize that I don't see this password being shared to this user. Then how come this user was able to log into this Windows machine? So you can create custom actions for this and say, like, send me an email when somebody logs into a box that they are not supposed to log in. I mean, you have checks and locks and controls in place, but all of this is only at the software level, application level. And how about the physical security? Like I said, if somebody were to like look over your shoulder and see some of your passwords or whatever you have open in your screen, that can't be protected by these applications, right? So even though we can't protect that incident from happening, we can at least let you know when something like this happens where a user connects to the machine, which is technically an unauthorized access. Like they are not supposed to access the machine, somehow they access it. And when they access it, there we will get that insight and send it to you. We'll let you know that this incident had happened, and we see that the last access of this credential was done by admin A, but user A has somehow logged into that box. And by correlating the incident, we realize that something out of the ordinary has happened. So this is called advanced event correlation. And there are even more scenarios that we can talk about for advanced event correlation. Like, for example, um, a user retrieves the password of a Linux machine, and then they directly go to that machine, like they bypass PAM, go to that machine and delete a file. Now, if they were to log in through PAM, if you have proper network segmentations, like if you look at our best practices guide, we would have strongly recommended you to separate the networks, like the end user machines, laptops, desktops. They should all be in a separate VLAN, and your secure devices and infrastructure that are mission critical, they should be in a separate VLAN. And PAM should be sitting in between, acting as a gateway or a proxy for users to gain access. Because in this design, the user can't directly reach that device. When they don't even have connectivity, it doesn't matter whether they have the credentials or not, because they don't have network access. And then comes credentials, right? So that's the best practice, but in some cases you can't always enforce it for all devices. So let's say there is a device for which users have direct network connectivity, and somehow a user bypassed PAM and directly went there and deleted a file. Even in this case, the activity of the user deleting the file is a story that is not visible to PAM. Now, if they have logged into PAM and launched an SSH session, we'll have full recording of everything they did. But in this case, they bypassed PAM and directly went to the box and deleted a file. So even in this case, when you have these advanced integrations with Analytics Plus and Log 360, PAM will give you the activity log of that session, the session which took place outside PAM. Whatever happened in that session, that activity logs will be pushed to PAM, and in PAM's audit area, you will be able to see what this particular user did during that session. So that is the benefit of having these contextual integration within Manage Engine's own BI and UEBA solutions. Now, the next topic is about application credential security. You will typically have scripts, config files, or connectors, or sometimes database files where credentials will be hard coded. If you want an application to talk to a database, you have to give that application some credential. And how are you going to give it? In most cases, it will be stored in like database parameter files or database configuration files. And the problem is, if somebody were to like get access to that box, even if it is read-only access, if they open the file, they can see the passwords in plain text. The other problem is if it's a database password and you're changing that password every 30 days, you have to remember to go to all of these files and places and update the password. Otherwise, your applications will fail. So most users choose never to change the password, which brings in a huge set of problems, like your audits. If you go through compliance audits, the auditors are going to ask you, like, when did you change this database password at last? Show me the evidence that you're actually changing this password every 30 days or 45 days. Now you have to say, no, we don't change it because, well, it's difficult to change. If I change it, 10 of my applications are going to break down. So that's not an answer we could give to an auditor, right? So how do you tackle this problem? One being passwords being in plain text pokes a huge hole in your security plan. And the second, not changing passwords because it needs to be changed in 25 files on 25 different boxes is too painful of a task. Obviously, somebody can't sit and manually do it. It's going to take days for them to like update the password, and it has to be done regularly. So that's not something that you can manually do. And the passwords can also be like, even though it's a database password given to an application to connect to the database and interact, somebody could steal that database and circumvent the application, like directly go to the database, manipulate the data, or even worse, export the database and steal it. All kinds of issues could arise by having these passwords hard coded in these places. Now, how can you solve the problems? PAM360 has integration with pretty much all the leading DevOps platforms, robotic process automation platforms, even vulnerability scanners. Now, these are common applications and places where you will have passwords hard coded. So let's take a simple example of a CI/CD pipeline. Now, let's say you have a Jenkins CI/CD pipeline and you have automation scripts. Those scripts are configured to run. And for them to do their job, you would obviously have credentials hard coded in them. So PAM360 has dedicated plugins for these CI/CD platforms. And for RPA, we have dedicated bots like Automation Anywhere or Cortex. If you're using any of these platforms or RPA solutions, PAM360 can help you by eliminating the credentials. You don't need to hard code credentials in your automation pipelines or RPA bots anymore, because PAM is going to have its own plugin or a bot which will securely retrieve the credentials out of PAM and then deliver it to your bot in real time. Meaning it's not cached, it's not stored. When your script runs, the script is going to practically log into PAM, fetch the password, and then run. Because that job of logging into PAM and fetching the password is done by our bots and our plugins for DevOps. So when you use these plugins, you don't have to hard code the credentials anymore. And this is sort of the workflow. You have these pipelines, and you see that the CI/CD checks the scripts and then runs the script. So everywhere you see pass, that's where a credential is being used. And in all those places, if the credential is incorrect, it's going to fail. Credential will be incorrect if you change the password in PAM and it gets changed in Active Directory. Let's say it's a service account password. So it changed in AD. You haven't changed it in your CI/CD pipeline, then it's going to fail, right? So with PAM, what's going to happen is that we will allow you to create variables. Like this is a screenshot of a Jenkins build environment section where you can see instead of the actual password, I'm going to use passwd1. So wherever I type passwd1, it will be replaced with the real password of this test machine and its test account. This test machine and test account and their credentials are already stored in PAM. PAM is managing that machine. This test account password is being changed every 30 days automatically by PAM. You guys already know about that, like how to create a group, how to set up a schedule, and rotate the password of machines automatically. So those capabilities of conventional ones, they're already there. The challenge is that every time PAM changes the password, your CI/CD pipelines will break. Now with this integration, you're going to remove the passwords in your CI/CD pipelines and use passwd1 as the password. And that passwd1 gets replaced with the real password in real time, and then the script gets executed. So you don't have to worry about breaking these pipelines just because you changed the password, and you also don't have to worry about somebody opening the script, looking at the plain text password and copying it. So that's how this DevOps integration works. This sort of the same concept applies even for robotic process automation. There you have bots. Bots have more complex workflows. And CI/CD pipelines are good for doing monotonous jobs by automating it. So it keeps doing the same thing repeatedly, and it's really helpful. RPAs are helpful in the sense it can do complex actions and then read the outcome, and based on the outcome it can trigger a totally different action. That makes RPA tools very powerful. We see a lot of customers heavily relying on RPA solutions and bots these days. So this is a screenshot of automation anywhere. And again, it's sort of the same, where you set up a variable and the variable is going to be replaced with the real password in real time when the bots run. And that job is done by our own bot. So we have a bot in Automation Anywhere Marketplace. You will have it installed in your RPA environment. Our bot will securely connect to PAM, retrieve the credential, and deliver it to other bots you are using in your environment. That way you can eliminate credentials and also make sure passwords are safe. And then comes vulnerability scanners. You have a lot of vulnerability scanners in the market, like Rapid7 Insight VM or Tenable Nessus. These scanners are designed to basically connect to all of your machines and scan them and find out if there are any vulnerabilities. In order to connect to those machines, you would have given credentials to these vulnerability scanners. They're probably stored in like a profile section or a credential section inside those respective scanner applications. Again, the challenge is if you change a service account password or a Windows administrator password, the scanner will break down because the scanner can no longer log into that machine and do the scan because it still has the old password, but PAM has changed the password to something else. So with our integration, we are basically connecting to your scanner and updating the password in its profile, whether it's Rapid7 Insight VM or Nessus. Um, Let's say you have a service account password and you change it in PAM. PAM will immediately, first PAM will connect to your Active Directory to change that service account password. Obviously, it will take the new password and deliver it inside your vulnerability scanner. So you don't have to worry about your scanners ever breaking down, because PAM takes care of delivering the credentials every time it gets updated or changed. And that's sort of how these integrations work. In addition to this, PAM360 also comes with RESTful API and SSH-based CLI APIs. These APIs are quite powerful. Pretty much all the operations that you can do in PAM360 are all exposed as APIs. So you can leverage them to eliminate credentials hard-coded in like PowerShell scripts or cron jobs or like bash files. We even have examples of PowerShell scripts to use those RESTful API calls. So you guys can like just reach our support team or drop an email in case if you're interested in looking at those examples. We'll be happy to share those with you. But in general, the APIs are very straightforward. So this is the list of APIs that we currently have. I see there are about 82 operations, all of which you can trigger programmatically. Let's start with a simple one of getting a password. I don't want to manually log into PAM and get a password. I want to run a command, and I want the command to fetch a password for me. So what would that command be? The command would be, let's say you're using a PowerShell script, and inside the PowerShell script, you will have this curl command. And the curl command has a unique authentication token, which will be securely generated inside PAM, and you will have it. And this URL is your actual PAM's application URL, and the resource ID and account ID, or the machine name and account name for which you want to retrieve the secret. So you'll basically trigger this curl command, and you will get this output where the password of the requested account is being sent as a response over SSL. Obviously, it's all done through HTTPS through an encrypted channel. So it's not like there can be a man in the middle attack or someone can steal this password in between. But that said, you have automated the job of getting one password. You don't have to log in. You can like name this file as getpassword.ps, run getpassword.ps, and you're going to get the result. It's a simple example. We can also look at some complex examples. And let's say in your company, you're using PAM360 for certificate management. So PAM can manage the end-to-end life cycle of your certificates. So you have application teams and database teams, and they need certificates every day. They need certificates for different purposes. Now today, they're probably sending you an email, raising a ticket. You are manually creating a certificate request, then you get it signed from your CA, and then you download it. Probably you're sending it through email, or you put it in a shared drive and ask the team to just grab the certificate from the shared folder maybe. These are the conventional methods that people are using for dealing with certificate requests. With PAM, you can fully automate it. Well, inside PAM, you can log in, you can generate a certificate, you can deploy it to the machine if you want. But let's go one step further. You have a vendor team, and you've instructed the vendor team to fill a form every time they need a certificate. Let's say you've created a simple form and you've published it through IIS or Tomcat web server. It's a form, it's a simple form, and the vendor is able to access the form. What can they do now? In the form, they fill the machine name for which they want the cert, the fully qualified name, the subject alternate name, all the details that are required for the certificate, like validity, department, location, region, all that data. They supply that in the form, they click on submit button. When they click on submit button, what's going to happen is the submit button will trigger PAM's API, and it will trigger, let's say, will map it to trigger create CSR API. In create CSR API, whatever information they filled in the form is submitted as a request, which makes PAM360 to actually create a CSR file And when the CSR file is created, PAM will send a response message saying CSR created successfully. And as soon as this message is read, like CSR created successfully is read, you can immediately trigger the next command, which is sign CSR. And sign CSR is going to take the CSR, submit it into your internal CA, get the CSR file signed as a CER file or a PFX file. The PFX file is a certificate key store, whereas CER file is an individual certificate. So whichever you want, you can like automatically have PAM sign and get it. Once that's done, you have another API, which is get an SSL certificate. So in this case, you will say get an SSL certificate and the name of that server. And that will basically download the certificate. In that form, the user has opened a browser form. Uh, in the browser, they're filling the form and they're clicking on submit. All you have to do is you have to make those three APIs hooked to the form's submit button. When they click on submit button, you want these three API calls to be triggered in the sequential order. And that's very straightforward to do. So in this scenario, from a user's perspective, the vendor logs into that web application or the web page you have given them where there is a form. They fill out the form, they push a submit button, and immediately a certificate is downloaded in their browser. So that's how easy it is to uh, automate a complex process such as building a key, CSR, signing it, because all of this can be done only by a privileged administrator in your enterprise, a security admin, someone who has access to your internal CA server. Only they can do it. And then the user, the vendor, can't rely on asking you for the certificates every time, especially if you deal with hundreds of certificates every day. You can automate it using such a setup. So this scenario is to just demonstrate the capability of our API. Like, what can you do with this API? And this is a real world scenario. We actually have a financial institution using this type of an integration. They've basically created a form and made the form trigger these API calls and just gave it to their application and database teams. So whenever those application teams and database teams need a certificate, they just fill out the form, submit it, get the certificate, and everything that happened is fully recorded and audited in PAM. And PAM actually does the job of brokering certificates to these users. So in that way, RESTful API feature is really powerful, and you can leverage it for all kinds of use cases. Like certificate generation is one example. Like I said, you can use it to, like, let's say you want a password to be retrieved from PAM and then stored in the registry of 10 Windows servers. Like, this is your scenario. You want a new password. Like, every time a password of a service account is changed, the new password of the service account should be set in the registry of 10 Windows servers. This is your need right now. How can you achieve it? Using our API. Even I have a PowerShell a script that has our API calls. When this PowerShell script runs, it is going to retrieve that password, go to those 10 machines, and run the registry key to set this new password. It can be automated with a simple PowerShell script because of our RESTful API's capability, where you're able to securely retrieve secrets. And with PowerShell, you can update secrets inside files. So we will be happy to even share those sample PowerShell scripts and all the sample REST API utilities we have. Will be happy to share them with you, so you will be able to test it and perhaps implement it in your environment for various scenarios. So to recap, we saw how PAM can be hooked with your ITSM solution to eliminate people having to jump between both applications. We saw how you can leverage PAM360's integration to get anomaly detections and advanced event correlation to find out what really is happening in your infrastructure, even when PAM is bypassed. And then we saw how you can hook PAM with your DevOps area, RPA area, vulnerability scanners to make sure they never fail and they always get to the latest credential when they need it. And then we saw how you can leverage APIs for application to application password management and application to database password management, because these are the places where Secrets are typically hard coded, and you can eliminate those secrets and implement this API setup in place so that it's fully automated and it is secure. So with that said, thanks for your time. Thanks for listening to this entire session. We also have some links to the useful product literatures like how-to videos, help guides, and all of it. And as Lekha mentioned, we've again been positioned in Gartner's Magic Quadrant this year. PAM360 solution has reached a place in Gartner's MQ. So you will be able to access this link and download the full report to see the review. You can also visit Gartner's Peer Insights page to see the feedback that our customers are writing about PAM360. And if you guys have a few minutes, we'll request you to actually write your valuable feedback about PAM360 in Gartner Peer Insights space as well. So yeah, again, thanks for your solution. Now we'll have a look at the questions, and I'll be happy to answer the questions that are there. Are there integrations with Freshservice? Yes, we don't have an out-of-box integration with Freshservice, but we'll be happy to give you a custom connector. I believe Freshservice supports REST API to submit a ticket ID or an incident ID and retrieve the secrets or like ticket details. Because of that, I think it's fairly straightforward. We'll be able to like create a custom implementation class, bundle it as a file and send it to you. Once you put that file in your PAM360's installation folder, you would be able to use the integration with Freshservice. And it doesn't stop with just Freshservice. Like you could be using Zendesk or any ITSM tool. As long as your ITSM solution has the API for us to supply a ticket number and get the ticket details, we can immediately integrate that for you. So feel free to reach out our support email ID, like just drop an email to support saying like, we would like to integrate PAM with XYZ vendor. And we'll go through the vendor's site and see what information is publicly available. They most likely will have the REST API documentation shared in public. So I think we should be able to gain all the data that we need, build the integration for you, and help you out in completing this ITSM integration. And the next question, do I need a separate license for Logs 360 and Analytics Plus? So Logs 360 is our full-on UEBA solution, and therefore you will need a separate license because it does more than just this PAM's anomaly detection. It does more than that. It's actually helpful for various other scenarios. So for that reason, yes, you will need a separate license for Logs 360. As for Analytics Plus is concerned, it again is a very powerful tool. It has a lot of different modules, and you can crunch any data. It's not just PAM's data. You can crunch data of anything. Like if you have Excel sheets with attendance or tracker or payroll or bookkeeping, any type of information, data that you have in huge volumes, that can be crunched by Analytics Plus, and it can give you valuable insights and even build dashboards for them. So that being said, yes, Analytics Plus is sold as a separate solution for all of your business intelligence needs, not just for hooking with PAM. But if you are looking to just hook it with PAM and you just want to get the basic anomaly detection features, then you can use our free edition. All our managed engine solutions are actually available as a free edition for all the enterprises. We have a trial version that will work for 30 days as a full version with all the features. But once the 30 days expires, the solution will convert into a free edition. Free edition is where you will have limited capabilities and limited insights. And in this case, those limited capabilities are enough for you to hook Analytics Plus with PAM360, and therefore, if you don't have a real need for an entire BI solution, you could probably just use our free edition of Analytics Plus to make it. But we suggest you to have a look at our Analytics Plus solution because like I said, it's a really powerful tool. It has a lot of capabilities, especially with the deep learning engine. You could do a lot more than just gain insights about PAM's area. All right, so if you guys do have more questions, as always, you can reach us to using the email ID that's there in the slide deck. or you can drop an email to our support ID, and we'll be happy to help you out. And once again, thank you for spending your time and watching this session. We'll process the recording, and we will be sending you the collaterals and all the useful information through email. Thanks for your time and have a wonderful day.